Upon waking up, Jiuyue dressed up as an abandoned woman in the mountains carrying 2 oil bottles, with a blood hole on her head. There is only 1 handful of rice left in the rice bag. Every day, I rely on digging wild vegetables to wrap my stomach. The child is starving to the point of skin and bones, not to mention that, there are even top-notch villains deceiving her into selling her son. If she doesn't sell it, she will grab it. Jiuyue took a deep breath, stretched out her claws, beat her hard, threw her out the door, and then came to serve with a machete. Without rice or vegetables, we are not afraid. We have space in our hands, and food doesn't just need to be hooked. Let's see that she has unlimited spatial knowledge on one hand, and her ability to cure poison on the other hand is not diminished, making money and raising children on the other hand is not wrong. As for that ex-husband, a certain prince smirked and said, "Love your concubine and calm down. We are not ex-husbands, we are money husbands." Keywords of the novel. Coy abandoned woman. Keeping cute children in a portable space with no pop-ups, coy abandoned woman. Keeping cute children in a portable space. Download the complete set of TXT, coy abandoned woman. Keeping cute children in a portable space. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Travel. Selling cute children. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Travel. Selling cute children. Raindrops fall on the leaves, making a rhythmic sound. Mother, wake up, wake up. The woman lying in bed, listening to her tender voice, sobbed softly in her ear, while shaking her body with a small force. In her slumber, Jiuyue finally frowned and her sharp eyes opened up, sweeping towards the 2 little nannies kneeling by the bed. Mother. Although the 2 babies are only 3 or 4 years old, they are very alert. Swept by Jiuyue's sharp gaze, her cute and adorable eyes, although filled with worry, involuntarily shrank their neck and then bit their lips with a small gesture. Mother, Ronger is afraid. One of the 2 little nannies whispered to Jiuyue. Jiuyue. At this moment, all her emotions converged into 5 words. I really want to die. What is this situation? She remembers the organization arranged a vacation for her. How did she sleep in this place? Mother, don't sell Ronger. Ronger knows how to make a fire, cook. And there's also an older brother who can wash vegetables and dishes. We will definitely do more work and let mother enjoy peace and happiness at home, mother. The little nanny named Ronger looked at her mother, who had opened her eyes but remained silent. She timidly glanced at the old woman standing on the side, her face full of calculations. He thought his mother was thinking about how much silver she wanted to sell him, and hurriedly said. He didn't want to be sold at all, even though he lived with his mother in this deep mountain and was worried every day, afraid that one day wild beasts would come and eat them. But he really doesn't want to leave his mother, let alone his brother. Upon hearing Ronger's words, Jiuyue frowned again and finally accepted the fact that she had traveled through time. Ronger is good, my mother won't sell you. Even if she's a beast, she won't sell her own son. She reached out and touched Ronger's tender face, comforting her softly. But as the last sentence ground through her teeth, her sharp gaze turned to the old woman standing at her house. She remembered that the reason why the original owner fainted was because the old woman in front of her, named Wang Auntie, had received news from somewhere that a family in the town wanted to buy a boy to carry on the family line. The old woman was reluctant to sell her grandson, so she turned her mind to the original owner who had just died as a hunter father and had 2 sons. And the original owner himself was also gentle and weak, speaking in a soft and gentle voice. How could I have seen such a terrifying scene of this old woman being both intimidating and tempting? Because she refused to sell her daughter, she was pushed down by the old woman, causing her to bump her head. If we talk about the original owner in Jiuyue, or if we talk about fate, it's really a difficult fate. However, in the hearts of many people, the original owner is a person of great wealth and wealth. The reason is Jiuyue was originally the daughter of a county magistrate. Although she was born from a commoner's family, she had no worries about food and clothing. If she could find an ordinary family to marry, she would still be able to live a good life. Unfortunately, Jiuyue was lucky. One day, her mother saved a young man on her way to incense and blocked him with a knife, and she died in despair. Before dying, he reported his family door clearly and begged the man to take care of his only daughter. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Abandoned Wives Sweeping Out the Door. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Abandoned wives sweeping out the door. Then, the man followed the timeless saying of saving lives by committing oneself, approached her county magistrate father, and married her. But, the bride had just entered the door, and her red headscarf had not even been lifted. She received a decree and went to war in a frenzy. As for her, the bride was left behind. Then, upon receiving the news of her husband's death on the front line, her husband's family immediately kicked her out of the house. Who? Jiuyue took a deep breath and turned her gaze to the two little nannies by her bed. As for these two, speaking of them is even more infuriating. The original owner, who had been kicked out of the house, wandered outside his mother-in-law's house for a long time and became increasingly angry as he thought about it. He felt that he had suffered a great loss and couldn't just let it go. I just found an opportunity to sneak in through the back door. Even if I don't take my mother-in-law's belongings, at least I can get my own dowry back. But before the person could enter, they saw a servant sneaking out with two large bamboo baskets. It made the original owner think that the servant had stolen good things from the mansion and planned to find a place to hide first. The original owner thought that the praying mantis would come to catch cicadas, and the yellow sparrow would follow. So I followed them secretly. After the servant hid the things, I took them myself and left. Who knew, when she followed her servants all the way to a mountain and watched them throw the bamboo basket away, she walked over and took a look. Wow, there are actually two sleeping male dolls. Moreover, these two male dolls are still her acquaintances, the twin sons that her short-lived ghost husband got from somewhere. The original owner muttered to himself that her mother-in-law could even lose her own grandson, let alone her daughter-in-law. It's impossible for her to go and get something else to come back. Looking at myself as an abandoned woman, it's unlikely to get married again. So as soon as she gritted her teeth, she picked up the two milk dolls and decided to raise them as her own sons, to take care of her in the future. Then, the original owner pawned all of her attire, exchanged several tens of taels of silver, begged and stayed in the wilderness all the way, and returned to his mother's house. Who would have known that after arriving at her mother's house, she intended to join her own father, but was kicked out by her father because she was already a married daughter and could not live in her mother's house. Okay, you can't stay at your mother's house, so they can always give her a few taels of silver, right? Not to mention one or two, she didn't give a single copper coin. Her father even had someone directly pass the word to her, asking her to take her two wild seeds wherever they fell in love. Anyway, he wouldn't care about her daughter. It was also okay, but in the end, she came all the way and met a hunter in this place. He had no children or daughters, but in his 60s, he was alone and had no possessions. The old hunter took her as his goddaughter and recognized two milk dolls as his godgrandchildren, letting them take care of him in the future. Moreover, in the village at the foot of the mountain, she and two milk dolls were given registered residence. From then on, she was no longer the daughter of a county magistrate, but a woman who came to flee from an old hunter's exile, whose mother died and her husband died. 2 months ago, an old hunter was injured by a fierce tiger during a hunting trip. Although he managed to escape with one life, he was still injured too severely and passed away within a few days. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Selling Your Son for Your Reason. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Selling Your Son for Your Reason. Jiuyue spent all her silver on her body, bought a coffin in the town, and begged the people in the village to help bury her godfather. From then on, there were only orphans and widows left to live in the family. The original owner didn't know how to hunt, so he could only split a copper plate into 2 halves. He also planted vegetables and grains near the hunting house, preparing to live like this. However, living in the same place as an orphan and widowed mother, the original owner seemed to be easy to bully, and naturally, some unscrupulous people would come along, such as Aunt Wang. I have children and daughters, grandchildren and grandchildren, and I want to use my bare hands to lure a white wolf and sell her son. Then I will swallow all the silver and not be afraid of choking myself to death. Jiuyue, how could you say that? Aunt Wang knocked down Jiuyue before, causing her to knock her head and be afraid. But now seeing that she had woken up and could speak, the fear in her heart had disappeared without a trace. Moreover, upon hearing that she was unwilling to sell her son, she almost went forward and snatched Ronger away. You promised well before, but now that I have already contacted you, how can we not sell it? Come here, you little thing, and your mother has already sold you. Oh. Oh. The thief's claws that she reached out towards Ronger were directly pinched by Jiuyue, causing her to scream in pain. Let go, Jiuyue, you. Let go. Her face turned pale as she tried to slap the little hand that Jiuyue was holding onto her wrist with her other hand, but it was forcefully opened by Jiuyue's other hand. Did I promise well? Jiuyue's eyes lit up lightly as she looked at Aunt Wang who was close by, and a wicked smile slowly curved her lips. Aunt Wang, I'll call you Aunt Wang. That's polite to you. Do you really consider yourself a person? In Anja village, we've never heard of anyone selling children or women. It's a malicious act that can be struck by lightning, and you did quite well. If you want to do it yourself, no one will hinder you from selling children and women. It's good of you, but your grandson is not willing to sell, yet he has his mind set on me. Is my child something you can think of? Don't forget what my father does. Do you really think that if my father is gone, no one will inherit his skills? I have been following my father for so many years, not to mention going through this mountain, but killing a chicken or a monkey is still possible. Aunt Wang, would you like to give me a try and see if the knives left by my father are sharp enough? After she finished speaking, she threw Aunt Wang's hand out. You. Aunt Wang was almost scared to pee when she said a few words, and following her swinging motion, she couldn't stand steady and was almost thrown into the wall. I dare not say a word if I want to curse. She knew that the little girl's father, Untu, was a well-known hunter in their Anja village. There was nothing on the mountain that he couldn't beat. I've only been getting old these past few years and can't move anything anymore. That's when I started talking to the beast and lost my life. It was precisely because Untu was already gone that she looked at Jiuyue, a girl with 2 young girls, who were easy to bully. That's why she came up with her idea. Who knows, this little girl's wrist is really strong enough to almost break. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Throwing out the window. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Throwing out the window. Jiuyue, you are a heartless person. Isn't my old lady thinking about you? If it weren't for looking at your orphans and widows, it would be so pitiful. Would you be willing to come to your place as an old lady? You're not willing to sell Ronger, some people are willing to sell it. Don't blame the old lady for not giving you a chance then. After hesitating for a long time, she finally threatened Jiuyue. She had seen Jiuyue suddenly become so terrifying and wanted to turn around and leave. But when I think about it, I'm really unwilling. The silver that has already been delivered to my pocket has to be taken out, and I won't be willing to put it on anyone else's body. Then Aunt Wang will go to the village and ask who is willing to sell children and women, and Jiuyue grinned at her with a sinister smile. If Aunt Wang thinks it's too troublesome to ask such a family question, why don't I go talk to the clan leader and Li Zhang and ask them to talk to you in the village? What do you think? You. Aunt Wang's evil breath stuck in her throat, and she was also afraid in her heart. The reason why she takes a liking to Jiuyue's child is because she feels that Jiuyue is far from the village, and the clan leader and the family would not know about it. If she is really stabbed in front of those two people about selling other people's sons, can she still get any benefits? That clan leader has a stubborn nature, and he will definitely drive her out of Anjia village. Okay, Jiuyue, you little scumbag, you don't know how to be kind, do you? You promised well back then, but you still want to go back. Do you think my old lady is easy to bully? I really think my old lady's family is empty, right? Wait, see if I don't find anyone to bring Ronger to town. Ah. What do you want to do? Jiuyue, you let me down. Before Aunt Wang could finish speaking, Jiuyue took a few steps forward and lifted her collar, walking to the window. It's so noisy. Then, without hesitation, he threw the person out of the window. This is her adoptive father's house, which is a treehouse with a certain distance from the ground, but if someone falls, at most they will only scratch their skin and flesh, and it won't really hurt their muscles or bones. Of course, this also requires her to grasp the right balance. Ah. After Aunt Wang was thrown down, she didn't hear much of a heavy object landing, only a scream. Immediately, the sound of cursing reached her ears. Jiuyue, dare you throw me down? Are you trying to kill someone? Wait for me to tell the clan chief and drive you out of the village, you despicable hoof. You go sue and see if the clan leader believes in you or me. Jiuyue stood at the window and looked down from a high position. She saw Aunt Wang, who was all disheveled and pointing her head up. Aunt Wang, what are you doing up the mountain in such a heavy rain? Look, you're not falling now. You have to be careful in the future. This time you just fell, and if you go up the mountain again, you might lose your life. Although you are quite old and still have to wait on the elderly and take care of the children at home, it is possible that you don't want to live anymore. But it's better to live than to die, and you can't do anything to commit suicide, right? Hurry up and go home. I will go talk to the clan leader later and ask him to talk to those in your family. Don't let you work so hard, it's easy to shorten your lifespan. Looking at how old you are, if you shorten your lifespan by a few more years, you probably won't have many months to live, right? You need to take it easy. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. How Cold the Ground Is. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. How Cold the Ground Is, You. Upon hearing her words, Aunt Wang was so angry that her whole body trembled, and her hand began to tremble as she pointed at her. Little bitch, wait for the old lady. On the tip of her tongue, she couldn't compete with Jiuyue anymore. She could only wait to tell her family about this matter, and they all went up the mountain together to clean up this little scumbag. After saying a harsh word, she turned around, gritted her teeth and endured the injury from the fall, limping away. Mother, will that bad person come again? She's too bad, will she bring someone to beat her mother? The other little baby next to Ronger, with tears in her eyes, looked cute at Jiuyue and spoke softly. Grandma Wang not only wanted to sell her younger brother, but also beat her mother. She looked at her mother fainting and didn't even know how to help her. It was still early spring, and the ground was so cold. He and his younger brother tried their best to shake their mother awake. No, Zhenger, be good and stop crying. Jiuyue squatted down beside her, hugging both of her babies and comforting them softly. Ronger is also well behaved. Her mother is very powerful. No matter how many people that mother.in.law brings, she is not a match for her mother. Did you see that just now? Her mother threw her out with one hand. The two little nannies must have been scared today. They have to go through these things at a young age, and she really feels heartbroken. Mother, she's not a mother.in.law, she's a bad person. Zheng Er's little head was muffled in her own mother's arms, and she said in a muffled voice. My mother clearly never agreed to her, so she had to say that she agreed to sell Ronger. She's a scammer. A big scammer. Okay, Jiuyue is right. That person is a big scammer. And Jiuyue followed the little one's words and said, indeed, Aunt Wang is definitely not a good person. If he were really a good person, would he have targeted unrelated people for the sake of money? Moreover, the original owner did not agree to sell Ronger to her. After all, the original owner was still waiting for the two little nannies to grow up and show filial piety to her mother. Unfortunately, she didn't have that blessing. Jiuyue Ronger, when your mother is not by your side in the future, when you see that bad person, you should keep a little distance and not let her see you, okay? She let out a deep sigh in her heart and gently instructed. Jiuyue and Ronger nodded heavily after listening to their own mother's words. Seeing the two little nannies so well behaved, and Jiuyue reached out and touched their faces. She stood up and led them to the bedside, letting them rest for a while. After a while, Jiuyue calmed down the two little children and got out of bed. Because I hit my head, when I first got out of bed, my head was still a bit dizzy, and I walked unsteadily. I couldn't help feeling a bit uncomfortable in my stomach. She knows her body, not only because she was hit, but also because she couldn't eat enough and didn't have much nutrition before, so she naturally felt dizzy. But at least, it can hold on. Jiuyue, Ronger, are you hungry? Mom will cook for you. Looking at the sky, it was already a bit dark. When Aunt Wang came to find her, it was still noon, indicating that the original owner and Aunt Wang had been entangled for a long time, not even cooking lunch for the two children. Mother, Jiuyue is not hungry. Mother, Ronger is not hungry. The two little ones said to their mother in unison. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Difficulty in cooking without rice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Difficulty in cooking without rice. Upon hearing this, Jiuyue turned around and once again reached out to lightly touch the faces of the two little nannies. Although encountering an unlucky journey, looking at the two obedient and civil little kids in front of me, I suddenly feel that everything is worth it. In her past life, she didn't even know who her parents were. With her own abilities, she became a spy and was often sent on very dangerous missions because she didn't have much power. Family, friendship, and love were not harvested in those years. As soon as I arrived at this place, I had two adorable, obedient, and very capable young children. Taking a deep breath, she went to the kitchen and the two little ones followed her, one to set fire and the other to wash the wild vegetables she had picked in the forest in the morning. It looked really heartbreaking. What is more heartbreaking for Jiuyue? Cough cough. She coughed lightly twice and looked at the opened rice bag in her hand. There was not a small bowl of white rice left inside. There was a line of MMP that I don't know if I should say it properly. It is said that a clever woman cannot cook without rice. With so little rice, how can she prepare good food for the two little ones to eat? Looking sideways at the wild vegetables being washed in front of Jiuyue and the white rice in the rice bag, I can't help but cook a little wild vegetable congee, which is still very rare. Because we still have to keep tomorrow morning's meal, we can't have this meal. There really isn't another meal, right? At night, it is quiet as usual. If only the mother and son were sleeping in the forest, even if there was a room, the former Jiuyue wouldn't dare. But Jiuyue's foster father was a capable one. He found a tall tree in the old forest, which was thick enough for 4 or 5 people to hold, and built a house on it like building a bird's nest. Of course, houses are built with wood, but they cannot be completed in a month or 2. According to his foster father, it took him 3 years to build this treehouse, and there were 6 rooms inside. 3 rooms, a kitchen, shared with the firewood room, a grocery store, for storing food, and a main house. But these 6 rooms are quite small, after all, they are built on trees and cannot be built too big. Because it is a suspended treehouse, and the stairs are built around huge tree poles, the bottom few stairs can still be lifted up with ropes. As long as the mother and son are inside the treehouse and lift the stairs, the beasts cannot come up. So, there is no fear of wild beasts attacking at night, and safety is still guaranteed. But usually, it's a bit troublesome to bring things up and use water in the kitchen, which is simply a challenge. But now after sleeping the two little ones, Jiuyue got off the bed and went to the kitchen. The most important thing to be careful of in a wooden house is the use of fire in the kitchen, and water is also an essential thing that cannot be saved. Looking at the water in the tank, which had already bottomed out, she pursed her red lips. Since my foster father passed away, the water in this water tank has not exceeded half a tank, because no matter how much the original owner wanted to rely on herself, she was just a weak woman. She brought the water from a long distance and lifted it up to the treehouse, and a bucket was enough to take half of her life. Of course, the original owner also placed a broken tank on the ground outside to collect water when it rained. End of this chapter. There are only 3 taels of silver left in chapter 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There are only 3 taels of silver left in chapter 7 nowadays. It has been raining for half a month and has not stopped. The water in the tank is also full, and she will carry the water there to wash vegetables and face. How could there be only a little bit of water in this water tank? Muttering to herself, she reached out her right hand and lightly tapped the edge of the tank with her index finger. Soon, the water tank that was originally placed there disappeared from her sight. Then she turned around and shifted her gaze to the pile of firewood on the side. After 2 months of burning, more firewood needs to be prepared, otherwise even burning would be a problem. But she doesn't care about these things now, she cares about. She walked to the pile of firewood and squatted down. She reached out to touch a corner of the pile and found a small bag of gray cloth. She gently blew the dust on it in her hand. Then, open it. I saw several pieces of silver lying inside. 1, 2, 3, only 3 taels of silver. I let out a sigh in my heart. These 3 taels of silver are the original owner. That is, the entire value of her at this moment. Previously, she spent all her silver to buy a coffin for her godfather, leaving only a few tens of one in copper coins. Later, she sold the silver hairpin she had left behind for 4 taels of silver. Then I bought some rice and noodles, and also bought some oil and salt, leaving only 3 taels of silver. Raising her ears again and listening to the sound of rain outside, Jiuyue let out a light sigh once again. Breaking a copper plate into 2 flowers is light. This rain is probably going to last for a while, and it won't stop. Currently, I only have 3 taels of silver in my hand, and my family has 3 mouths waiting to eat. I'll go to the town to buy rice and noodles to eat, and I'll pay for everything. With a movement of her hand, she placed 3 taels of silver into the space. When it comes to the space in her hands, it has been with her since she remembered it. She wondered if it was because she disappeared and appeared that she was abandoned by her biological parents. Because I have heard from the orphan dean who adopted her before that she has been extremely mysterious since childhood, and can be described as going through the wind and clouds. Although this statement is a bit exaggerated, she was not sensible when she was a child, so she often entered the space and came out, just like playing hide and seek, making it difficult for the dean to find anyone. At that time, she still found it very fun. Later on, she joined the organization, and it was because of this mysterious space that she was able to survive safely and unharmed within the organization. Otherwise, just because of her lack of connections, she would have been gnawed by those colleagues and left with nothing left. Hiss. Who? After taking a deep breath, she exhaled heavily and then shifted her gaze to the direction of the grocery store. Inside, besides storing food, there were all the things her father used to hunt. Naturally, because there was not much silver on the body and there was no food in the grocery store, it looked empty. The original owner also does not know how to hunt. If he targets his prey, it is not enough for them to share and eat, so these things are not even useful. But now she has never survived in the wild, not to mention these guys. Even if she doesn't, she can still make a bite out of her prey. Naturally, one can survive well in this jungle. After a while, Jiuyue took the hunting gear and locked the door tightly before leaving. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. It's better to have a foster father than to have a biological father. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. It's better to have a foster father than to have a biological father. First, go to the most familiar spring in the forest and place the water tank to collect natural rock water. Then, according to the original owner's memory, go to several traps that her father had taken her to before to see if there were any prey. This was also something her father had reminded her before he passed away. In fact, her father knew that he couldn't do it anymore, and what he cared most about and couldn't rest assured of was her goddaughter and 2 little grandsons. In these days, my own biological father is not as good as a foster father who has only known me for a few years. It's really scary to think about it. Of course, imagination is beautiful, but reality is very bone-like. When one comes into those traps, not to mention large prey, it's just a wild chicken that they haven't seen. And Jiuyue had already thought of this. Those wild beasts may not speak, but they are not stupid either. There is nothing important in this trap, and no wild beast from any family will jump foolishly into it, will they? She took a deep breath and then turned around to pick up many dry branches. She said it was a dry branch, and even after so many days of rain, it no longer dried up. It was just some moldy branches that would break easily when broken. She placed the moldy branches on those traps. Then she sprinkled some leaves, trying to make these traps look like ordinary flat ground, and made a few marks that she could understand before leaving. Going back to the bamboo forest, I chopped some bamboo and collected it all into the space. Finally, I returned to the place where there was spring water and saw that the water tank was already full, so I directly put it in the space and went home. After returning home and putting the water tank in place, Jiuyue took a look at the 2 sleeping children in the room and breathed a sigh before entering the space. She had not actually discovered any other functions in this space besides storage, and speculated that it was very likely that she had not grasped the mysteries of the space. But this space is really big, hundreds of acres of land, enough for her to put a lot of things. The only drawback is that there is not a single grain of soil inside. All of them are paved with pieces of jade, and these jade pieces are not the same small ones. Each piece is about 100 square meters in size. On top of the jade, there is always no way to grow food. She used to think that she could only store something, so that she could save some energy when it was difficult to move. There are many shelves and cabinets in the space, all of which are the things she collected before. Because she was previously put in a difficult situation and had to go to the wild mountains and forests for a month of training. With such a magical space, she couldn't have been unprepared and suffered this loss for nothing. Moreover, although she is often harassed, she is not someone who enjoys being a vegetarian. So, after knowing that she was going to receive training, she applied for half a month's leave from the organization and advanced 2 million yuan to buy some daily necessities. Rice, noodles, and grains are definitely not needed in the wild, so she didn't stock up and bought some snacks to keep. Of course, there are still instant noodles, which can be soaked as long as there is water. In addition, she also bought a set of solar energy storage devices to facilitate her survival in the wild. I can also use it here in the future. I let out a heavy sigh, feeling regret in my heart. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Micro-Nano Space. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Micro-Nano Space. If I had known I would encounter such a big time traveling event, I would have spent all 2 million to buy food and meat and vegetables. Anyway, it's stored in space, and it won't spoil for many years. This space is indeed very good, but it is much better than those refrigerators in previous lives. The things stored in the space will never break down. It can isolate all bacteria inside. Even if the external things are brought in with bacteria, the space can purify them. It's hard to buy 1,000 pieces of gold. I knew it earlier. She shook her head and decided to do something practical instead of secretly regretting here. Holding a machete, cutting the bamboo into pieces, and then using rattan to form a fence, fixing it in one place. After making 3 5-meter square fence circles, Jiuyue was already exhausted and couldn't stand up. Oh my god, I'm a bit weak, isn't my body? Stretching out his little fist, he gently pounded his back, feeling that his waist no longer belonged to him. This needs to be put aside. She doesn't even blink her eyes after working for days and nights without sleeping. And now that I have only done so little work, I feel like I have lost half my life. It's really different from before. However, despite the hardships, looking at the 3 fence circles in front of her, Jiuyue was still satisfied. Although vegetables cannot be grown in the space, it is always possible to raise some small poultry, right? Well, it's decided. These 3 fences, one for raising chickens, one for raising ducks, and one for raising rabbits. As for where these chickens, ducks, and rabbits come from, starting from tomorrow, she will go searching all over the forest. There are not many other things in the mountains, such as wild chickens, ducks, and rabbits. There are plenty of them, especially now it's early spring. The little ones who have been hungry all winter must have been running all over the mountains looking for food. She caught them and saved them from finding their own food. How great it was. As for the rest, with such a large space, we always need to find something else to take care of, and we can't waste it in vain, can we? Those cabinets and shelves are all placed in a corner, leaving a few acres of land to accommodate some things without occupying such a large space. We need to plan it carefully and not leave it randomly. As she thought, she murmured softly, even if this space belonged to her alone, it had to be aesthetically pleasing and not as cluttered as a dog's nest. Even she herself would hate it in the future. But not now. She has been tired all night and needs to get a good sleep. Tomorrow, she will have the energy to go to the mountains and find something to eat. Otherwise, the 3 of them will definitely starve to death. However, before she could even think of leaving the space, she turned her head and saw a shining red dot, flashing back and forth, indicating that the red dot had been right behind her. Who are you? At least it was people who were also accompanied by space in 2 worlds, and there was still a bit of composure. And Jiuyue was only surprised for a moment before waking up and asking the red dot. I'm Weina. The flashing red dot flickered again, and a tender voice came from the direction of the red dot. Weina. This is this space. And Jiuyue blinked and then blinked again. Can she think so? In fact, this micro-nano is the soul in the space she holds, and can control everything in this space. It's not possible. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. I dare not say it, I have to hold it back. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. I dare not say it, I have to hold it back. The red dot flickered once again, and the sound echoed into Jiuyue's ear. I am Weina, also a living organism residing in this space, but I cannot control this space because only you, my master, can control it. Upon hearing this, Jiuyue's face turned black and she almost couldn't resist. She slapped little red dot directly. How dare you pry into my heart and seek death? No, master, please listen to Weina's explanation. Although Weina didn't feel any harm in prying into the owner's heart, it couldn't help but panic when it heard the last 3 words spoken by its owner. Although it is a host in this space, it still needs to listen to its owner. Sometimes, even the owner's sharp eye can cure it and keep it in a corner for the first few days without daring to come out. It is still instinctively afraid. You didn't lock your heart, and I just accidentally heard this, it wasn't intentional. Jiuyue. Did this guy accidentally hear her inner world, or was it her fault? How could you still say that you are so aggrieved? She took a deep breath and put the question aside before asking Weina, how did you get here? Don't you know? I've been with you for 2 centuries. Weina was a little puzzled, as it had been with its master in two different worlds. Surprisingly, the master didn't even know of its existence. Unconsciously, it wanted to let out a sigh. This owner is really careless. But if it disdains its owner's words, it dares not say it and has to hold it back. Jiuyue. Please forgive her for her incompetence. She really didn't know about her past life, and this red dot has always been with her. You followed me before. Why didn't you show up? That. Little red dot hesitated to speak, with a tone of uncertainty about what to say. Hurry up and say it. And Jiuyue didn't have the time to wait for it to hesitate. She was quite impatient and said. Well. Before, the space didn't change, so I was always banned and fixed. Now that the space has changed, I can come out. Weina said honestly. What's there to say about this, still hesitating for so long? And Jiuyue was also speechless. It was just a sentence. She had been banned and fixed before, and it wasn't such a shameful thing. But after saying this, she felt that something was not quite right. What do you mean, saying I used to be incompetent? Did you talk like that? As it said before, it cannot control this space, only she can control it, which means that only she can change the space. Weina's words were more of a disdain for her than a self-accusation. Is it because she never realized that this space could be changed, so she was unable to release the micro-nano space as a host? So, it's still her fault. Oh, this. Weina was yelled at by her and instinctively trembled for a moment. She thought to herself, didn't you ask me to say that? But it dare not say this to the outside world. Its instinctive desire for survival is still very strong. Master, Weina didn't mention you, but rather said that this Weikong pavilion is too stingy and hasn't appeared in front of you, making it impossible for you to use this space. Weikong pavilion, what is that thing? Before he could even ask 2 words, he heard a scream coming from outside. End of this chapter.